Just got the live stream notice.
We are live and broadcasting, Mr. Chairman. The show is yours.
All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the September 7th, 2022 meeting of the White Cliffs Committee. Pursuant to S2985 as amended, a bill to extend certain COVID-related amendments to the open meeting law as modified by Chapter 22 of the Acts of 2022, permitting remote meetings and participation until March 31, 2023, signed into law on July 16, 2022. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance by members of the public will be permitted. This meeting will be live streamed, but will not include public participation. So with that, welcome everyone. Why don't we hit the minutes? We have two. We have July 20th, 2022. Do we have a motion to approve those?
Mr. Chairman, if I may just suggest that one amendment to the August 11th minutes before the motion is, or should we maybe take the motion first and then I make the comment? Sorry.
Well, since you decided got in the way, well, so there's nothing wrong with 20, right?
No.
All right, so do I have a motion on 20?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of, was that July the 20th?
Yep.
Well, second.
All right. Any discussion? Hearing none. All right, we'll go around this will also be our roll call. Norm,
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes. So the July 20 meeting minutes are approved. All right, so now we're at August 11th. And John, do you have a correction?
Yes, on page 2, under the 5 criteria from the committee's input, criteria number 3 says reduce municipal burden, maintain additional tax dollars being spent. It should be minimize additional tax dollars being spent.
All right, with the
Apparently
correction,
my handwriting is not too clean, so.
with the correction noted, do we have a motion to approve the August minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the August 11th, 2022 minutes
As
Second.
amended.
as amended.
As amended, seconded by Diana. All right, let's go around. Norm,
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
and I vote yes, which brings us to the main event. All right, John, did you have anything you wanted to add before we?
No wind up here. Brett's been working and talking to boards and committees and outside potential developers and operators. So we'll just turn it over to him for an update on where the RFP process stands.
Go ahead, Brett.
Sure. Thanks very much for having me again. So that's basically the rundown. I think we're making substantial progress, which is good. I told John this earlier. I just checked my database log of potential. I've broken it down into 3 main categories: developers, operators, and then adjacent professionals who are going to be architects and historic preservation folks and tax credit folks and brokers. And I've just logged, there were 50 in the database, and I haven't logged the last 3 or 4 handwritten pages of stuff that I've got. So I expect there are probably another 7 or 8 names on that list. And these are all people who will be I'm going to send out a primer in a little while, and then we'll be recipients of the RFP. And so there's been a very good response from lots of different communities, and I can kind of color that a little bit now, which is the development community has been responsive. I've got a lot of interested people who were coming from either historic adaptive reuse specialties or housing specialties, or the more unique mixed use, hospitality, creative arts, cultural uses. And that's been quite a good response. I've had a really good response from historic preservation adjacent folks who have put me in touch with quite a good number of interesting potential end users that have done similar projects and similar things in other communities, not just in Massachusetts, but Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Connecticut, New York, pretty much everywhere. And their response has been not universally positive, but quite good. They're all often a little less sophisticated on the real estate side of things and a little more sophisticated on the operational side of things. And so they brought up a lot of good points. They had a lot of good questions. And this seems to be something that the community in general is interested in pursuing. So that's great. And then we've got, some general feelers out to brokers and the brokerage community. I sent out a request through a couple of organizations, professional organizations that I belong to, for real estate advisors and planners and brokers, and was flooded with emails from California and New York, Philadelphia, just about everywhere. So there's I'm chasing down all of those. I've been on the phone for about 2.5 weeks, having 2 to 5 calls a day, which has been really good. Good experience, good exposure, but also a really good signal that there's some genuine interest in this opportunity. So that's all very, very good. And so that just keeps increasing that database to a larger and larger pool of people who may be interested. And so far I've had quite a good response to say, we're certainly interested to hear more. I've got a little boilerplate that's got, the 2 links to 2 of the documents, Norm's 2015 compiled historical account, and then the feasibility bulk data dump of all of that big report. And I've been sending that along with a general timeline of what we think we're going to do and how our process is going to go. And that's gotten a really good response too. People have been on the calls being well informed. They've reviewed the materials. They know enough about, they've Googled the site. They've done lots of research in advance. So I think that's really, really a good sign. My initial thesis was we were going to have to find someone or a group that were not necessarily paying attention to what we're doing here or what you're doing here in Northborough. And I think that's been borne out a little bit by these conversations that, I talked to one person, they say, who you should call? You should call X, Y, and Z. They have a really neat facility out in the Berkshires that might be similar to this, and that's been a really good source of momentum. So that's where most of my energy has gone over the last 3 or 4 weeks. And so I am a little behind on the actual, clickety clackety of typing up the RFP. So where I baked in about 30 days of fat to the end of the year on that Gantt chart that I sent over, and I'm going to start dipping into about 15 days of that. So in about a week or so, I should have the sort of wireframe of our RFP, the major components of it, for your review and response. And I think that'll be right around the same time I'll have some additional insight from the boards and commissions that I'm going to be meeting with in the coming weeks, and that'll tie in well together. So I'm assuming I've moved my Gantt 15 days ahead. So instead of being ready for delivery of let me just pull it up. RFP goes out. The window starts on the 30th of September instead of the 15th. So not that much of a difference. I think having a 60-day window is enough time for these folks to respond, especially since what I imagine the majority of the respondents will have been primed already, and we're going to continue to publicize as best we can and research as best we can those individuals who we want to make sure are on notice of the RFP when it releases. But I think that's a good window to have, October and November kind of and we can even sheet that into December if we need additional time or there's more work to be done on refining that scope. But I think that gives us a good window. And then you've got, the holidays and the first of the year to deliberate and make some decisions and think hard about your criteria for selection.
Brett, I have a question. Through your discussions, your preliminary discussions with prospective respondents, have you found that the scope is broadening based on what their potential interest is, or is it becoming a little more focused because they're all kind of in one direction?
No, I think you're absolutely right on the former, is that it is actually broadening. I initially thought maybe we would have more of a consensus of hospitality reuse, but that hasn't been the case. I've had some hospitality users and developers say, actually this might be better for housing, or could be flexible for a number of uses. And I've had, significant number of interested parties that are traditionally in the more normal, I should say, historic adaptive reuse space. So housing, mixed use, those sorts of things. So it's really run kind of a broad range. And I think I'm not sure what we call it yet, but the sort of unique entrepreneurial hospitality experience space, which is kind of the outlier here. It's the sort of alchemy in real estate is, I've talked to a handful of people who say, oh yeah, I bought an old farm that had been abandoned for 40 years. And now we do weddings and apple picking and events and all sorts of things. We make our own wine and cheese. And it's a lot of really interesting experiences for people. That's another thing that comes up, and those are a little bit more responsive to opportunities rather than I'm going to go buy a building and do this thing. They see an opportunity, and I'll give you an example. I talked to one person who went from making jams in having a table at a farmer's market, for 6 or 8 months, to then 2 years later having this, a 13 room B&B in the mountains with hay rides and donkeys and farm to table dinners, and the trajectory is kind of outrageous, right? But those are the really interesting opportunities we want to make sure we're trying to chase down a little bit. But I actually did hear from a couple of people that say this might not be a bad site for multifamily housing or some variety of more dense housing, whether that's elderly, senior, family, whatever it is, affordable market rate.
So Brett, you are scheduled to appear before the Board of Selectmen on Monday, the 12th.
That's right.
To have a discussion with them and get their input. And then my understanding is you were scheduled to meet with the planning board, but that has been the meeting was canceled.
Their meeting didn't happen, I guess, yesterday. Was it yesterday? I don't know.
So you have the planning board.
The next planning board meeting, and Norm's got me scheduled for the next historic committee meeting as well.
Brett, are you able to make, I sent you an email yesterday with the dates of the planning board meeting, which is September 20th, and the MPIC meeting, which is September 15th. Are you able to make both of those meetings?
What time is the, so I've already got the 15th on my calendar, so I'm blocked off for that, so that's fine. And then the 20th, you said?
Yeah, unfortunately, I have 3 public hearings scheduled for that evening.
Oh, yeah, so I thought I had responded. That's fine.
Okay.
As long as these are remote, I would say.
Yeah, definitely remote.
Okay.
And I can probably give you a more realistic time for the planning board a couple of days out. Sometimes they just go ahead and continue without appearing, which of course changes my time frame significantly. So I will keep you posted on that.
Okay. Yeah, those times, dates and times are fine.
All right, so that should get you wrapped up by the 20th. So you're meeting with the selectmen on September 12th. the Master Plan Implementation Committee on September 15th, and the Planning Board on September 20th. And then the Historic District, when is that, Norm?
We meet tonight. We'll decide tonight when our next meeting will be. We're trying to figure out. Tonight, we're meeting face to face. We haven't done that for about a year. We'll schedule a video one either later in this month or very early in October.
That should get you pretty much everything you need at that point, right? Brett?
Yes, yep.
Okay.
And I think I can't recall if I came out to the site after or before our last meeting, but in any event, I'll just relay. The last time I had seen the building was 2015, I think, or 2016, and I generally don't have expectations of what I'm going to see when a building has been, closed up for a long period of time. But I was remarkably surprised, pleasantly surprised at how well it's all been preserved and maintained. Everything looks quite good. I know that those the ballroom and the kitchen buildings are hideous and not the right design or style. They feel solid and relatively reusable. So I think there's flexibility with those spaces as well. They could be demolished, but certainly if a developer or user finds that there's utility in those buildings, I think that's also got a good benefit. And there's tons of parking, probably way more parking than you need. And so that's also a great benefit of having additional flat spaces to use for a variety of uses. So all in all, I'm as pleased as I can be with all the caveats of huge old building that's actively deteriorating as they do. But I'm generally pleased in what I've seen. So.
Yeah, just, as the committee knows, a big focus and early on was really just securing the building envelope. The roof was a major issue, was leaking. So replacing the roof, fixing a couple of the rotted dormer off the back, sealing up the window sills, and just securing the building, I think it's gone a long way. And to the extent possible, Sean Thompson, our facilities manager, has done a good job of trying to isolate the historic portion of the building from the additions and try to the best of our ability, again, to maintain the humidity levels in the historic part of the building. So all that stuff is helpful, but it is a challenge, and it is not conditioned space. So there's no heating, there's no cooling. So, there's limits to what we can do, but it's nice to hear that you feel that the place has been maintained as well as it could, given the fact that it's vacant.
Yeah, and I was there only a couple of days, I think, Sean, after you had put the dehumidifiers on, and it already felt not uncomfortable to walk around in. Usually you go into spaces that are full of mildew and wet and damp, and your allergies are flaring up, and you feel like it's all. But it was already doing. It felt perfectly comfortable in there, so that's really good. And some of the conversations I had with end users, specifically this is sort of generally pushed by caterers, kind of caterers on steroids that do this sort of model of they occupy a large historic property and they have really kind of bespoke services and very, very enhanced model rather than just being a caterer that shows up in a truck. They said, we do this all the time with historic properties, and we don't really care if there's an elevator because we're not going to use the second or third floors all that intensely. We don't care if there's a full service kitchen because we do all of our prep work off site. As long as there are warming ovens and refrigerators and a bunch of tables to lay things out, it doesn't really matter that the improvements aren't as robust as you would find in a full service restaurant caterer, restaurant run facility. So that it's nice to hear those sorts of things, that there are these creative people who are able to use spaces in a less intense way that would perhaps reduce the upfront costs to the end user to getting the thing up to speed. So. that's sort of my update. I've got lots and lots and lots of notes, and all of them generally are, this is a challenge. It's going to be a challenge, but it's not insurmountable. So that's a hope that makes me hopeful. We only need one of them, right, to actually pull the trigger. So I think between the interest we have and the way we're going to go about doing this, which has been, I've left every conversation with, I'm happy to walk the site with you. I'm happy to, we'll do everything we can to help you look at this and see it. And we've got a ton of documentation and data that we can share with you. And we're happy to share all of it with you that we can. And that's been, and I don't think any of the people that I spoke to that had reviewed, Peregrine and DBBW's work was surprised by anything. Most of them said, yeah, that's probably what I would have expected the report to say. It's tough, but we're going to, we get it done. We figure out ways to do it. And, we just need to work hard and figure out how to do that. So while we're not out of the woods yet, and I don't expect to have 100 responses, I certainly think that there's interest out there. And I have spoken to a couple of local people who expressed interest, 3 or 4 various flavors of business people and interested parties. So I'm happy about that as well. So it's not just people from far afield, there is local interest as well. Anyone have any questions? I'm going to sort of, as I am wont to do.
Just an observation that, the magic here is going to be in the networking and the finding the people that aren't looking. It's like finding that right employee who's not looking for a job.
Right.
We're trying to find the right developer operator who may or may not be looking for a project at the moment until you put it under their nose and entice them with the uniqueness of this particular opportunity. So, and
what's really helpful too in these conversations, I spoke to someone twice. The first time they said, "Oh, this is a big project," and then a week later I talked to them again and they said, "Actually, I've got 2 or 3 other people who I'm putting a team together. We're going to be ready to respond to the RFP. So I'm excited about this process, but I know it's too much for me to bite off and chew. So I've put a team together and we're going to really think hard about this." And that's encouraging as well.
Great.
Yeah, I still have a few notes. I have some contacts out there that are trying to get some responses for other contacts. So I'm still waiting to feed you more potential contacts.
Send them along.
I hope.
Yeah, Norm, actually, some of the, sorry, if I can just, the article that recently appeared, and Norm, you were heavily quoted, was very helpful, I think, in getting some more word out there. I know we received a few inquiries, which we forwarded to Brett. So, so as we get a little bit of coverage and a little bit more press coverage, as we start releasing the RFP and so forth, I think it just generates interest and it brings more people into our sphere of influence. So it's all good. So I appreciate that.
I'll tell an anecdotal story that, I'm not sure what exactly to do with some of this stuff, but I was speaking to someone who was successful at repositioning a similar asset, sort of Metro West in Boston. They said that they had brought someone in who, before they started the redevelopment process, who takes photographs of sort of derelict old buildings, and they have a strong Instagram following. And while I'm relatively young, that whole sort of alchemy of social media doesn't really make any sense to me. But they said, he came in and he took all of these pictures and he saw this building in a way we just had never seen it before. And it created a tremendous amount of traffic. So I'm thinking about those and ended up getting them a tenant and all this other stuff. So it's all of these little things that we try and poke as many buttons as we possibly can to try and see if we can wake up the people who we want to wake up. And so you're exactly right in that regard.
Is there anything that could be put on LinkedIn that would be helpful in the absence of the actual RFP? Or do we just
Yeah,
wait
so
for the RFP?
my plan was to, in maybe like 2 weeks before we release the RFP, to release something, LinkedIn, various sources that kind of primes the well a little bit. Thinking
Okay.
harder about what to do, about how to do that, but
Can you,
and I can make that available as sort of a boilerplate post to share around as well.
that would be great.
Yeah. Easy enough. The article that Norm was, that made Norm famous, what,
You haven't
made him
seen- you
more
haven't seen
famous.
everything I've seen, but go ahead.
where was that? Where can I see that?
Oh, it's Metro West News.
Metro West News, yeah, it used to be Middlesex News.
Okay, Great.
Yeah, it came out just not even a week ago.
okay.
When we talk about the RFP, John, there's a logistics piece of it regarding timing, combis, central register, all that process. So Brett, there's a timeline associated with the public posting in a newspaper, the community, the
Yeah.
central register. You've gone through all that process in the Commonwealth before?
Well, I don't do it, but yeah, I've been in the passenger seat when it's happened.
Right, but you're aware of the timeline.
Yeah.
It'll take us like a week and a half to get everything in the queue.
Mhm.
So the September 30th Gantt shift gets us, on the street the end of the first week of October likely. So it's in the municipal world, it's easy to lose a week by blinking your eyes once or twice.
But I think that's fine. October and November are good times for those folks to be out, putting together their teams and putting together their responses. So I think that's a good window.
Yeah, Sean, can you send, would you be so kind if you send Brett sort of a little timeline of when we need things to get them posted and advertised in accordance with procurement laws? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think isn't Wednesday the week before a deadline to get something, or that's a central register. I'm not sure where we're going to be putting this.
Yeah, the Wednesday before, the Wednesday before the Tuesday, it appears. So it appears on the Tuesday, you submit it the Wednesday before for the central register. Combis goes up fast, and the public newspaper, the legal notice in the newspaper, I don't know if anybody looks at them, but those are generally about a week out anyway.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Terrific. Can I do anything else for any of you?
Well, one question through the chairs, given this time frame, what would make the most sense for us to plan to meet again?
Let's see. So I've said the 15th, but that's sort of a placeholder. So if I can get you the draft RFP by the 15th or 16th, we can meet the week after if that's convenient to discuss and create and make any changes to those drafts. I don't know if a week is sufficient for you folks to. I know you're volunteers, but whenever you are comfortable with coming back to the table.
So would it make sense then for us to meet on the either the September 21st or the 22nd in the afternoon?
It's fine with me.
The 22nd would be more preferable. My Wednesday afternoon is a little bit congested already, so.
I could do 2 o'clock on the 22nd.
That's
Does
fine.
that work for folks?
It's okay for me.
So September 22nd at 2 p.m. by Zoom.
Great.
And we'll distribute the RFP draft the week prior, so people have time to look at it. While we have everybody here, Laura, you want to just give an update just for maybe the public that might be watching the meeting? I sent out the official notice that from the Most Endangered Historic Resources Program from the state. We did get officially, well, that we got nominated, but we know that because we nominated ourselves. So just, do you want to just give a quick update on that process, Lori?
Sure. So last week I submitted an application on behalf of the White Cliffs Committee and the town of Northborough to Preservation Massachusetts. They have a most endangered resource designation program, and it's a competitive program. It's essentially an honorary designation, which will mean that we will be entitled to technical assistance from Preservation Massachusetts, which is a historic preservation entity that provides grant programs as well as assistance to those who want to preserve historic buildings. So a major benefit of this designation is that the White Cliffs Mansion would be featured on their website. And we would have kind of a designation that we could kind of shout from the rooftops to bring more awareness to the White Cliffs Mansion. So they have a large network of preservation professionals and also have close ties with the development community. So this sort of designation would put us on the roadmap of those specific professionals. So hopefully one of them will be interested in partnering with the town or purchasing the building from the town of Northborough and reusing it in some great way. So it doesn't obligate the town to anything. It would just be a win-win for the town and the White Cliffs Mansion. So hopefully we will hear at the end of October, and then our building will be featured in the beginning of November, if chosen.
So the timing of that actually works very well for us in terms of raising the awareness of the opportunity of White Cliffs. So I just want to acknowledge, my name was at the bottom of that application, but Lori wrote everything and did all that work, and she did a fantastic job putting that together and getting that out for the deadline. So I just want to thank her publicly for that. And again, in working with Brett, there's no downside to that. It's all just more marketing and awareness for the potential project. So I appreciate that, Lori.
Thank you.
Lori, do they connect any resources to old building owners to have the properties listed for the register?
Yeah, there's a whole array of technical assistance that is kind of spelled out in the program, but not in a heck of a lot of detail. So we would be assigned like a person from the Preservation Massachusetts Most Endangered Resource Program that will be a resource for the town to ask all sorts of questions. They'll kind of be like a brain that we can bounce ideas off of. They'll give us suggestions for how to better position our property. And they will also put us in touch with the people that we need to be in touch with. That's my understanding.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that kept coming up amongst preservation folks is the building on the National Register, or what's the status of the building from a protection standpoint and access to tax credits. And it's tough. These applications really can't be done in-house anymore. You got to hire somebody to do them, and that costs a lot of money. And there's a reality associated with that, which I appreciate. But if there's any opportunity to kind of foster that conversation, that's a step in the right direction for sure.
Yes, and I did in the application, that was one of the questions, is whether it's currently a listed property, which it is not.
Mhm.
So I did express the interest in listing the property. And of course, the preservation restriction, which we understand will have to be attached to the property.
It's sort of a, which do you, when do you start? How do you get that process going without stepping on your own toes sometimes? But yeah, that's something we definitely need to keep in mind. And that's in my notes for the RFP are these sections on, we don't have this preservation restriction in place yet, but the expectation is that there will be one and there will be an opportunity to have the property listed. And these are expectations that respondents are on notice that this is what the reality of what's happening on the ground and what the expectations are. So we don't want any surprises. So, and that's the last thing I'll say is that's been another really good piece of feedback is people say, oh, this is good. This is real. This isn't just you're floating something out there to, appease voters or something like that. You're really genuinely interested in getting a productive deal done for the town. And that's really been well received because it takes a time and energy and money to put these things together. And nobody wants to feel like they're being used as a,
Free research.
Yeah, free research and
Yeah.
let's see what you think. And, I've ticked the box, we put it out to RFP and now we can do whatever we want going forward. So that's been genuinely, well received.
All right. As I revisit the agenda, we have spoken with Brett. We have arrived at a meeting date and we've discussed other business. Is there any other
asked me
business?
if I had any questions.
Well, is there any other business?
I do have a few questions, and they should be brief. One is, I really want us to start thinking about, or somebody to start thinking about ARPA funds, what we should consider and what we should consider for funding dollars and what we should consider using them for the building. I'd like to kind of see a wish list of what would be the best use of ARPA funding for the building, even if the minimum is just to continue to be able to carry our monthly costs for the next 5 years. I think at a minimum we need that, but I think there's probably some more creativity we could try to think through. So that's one thing. And my understanding is quite soon the Board of Selectmen will start dishing out some money for ARPA funding. And
Yeah, I think the timing, Norm, will work well as we go through the RFP process and we start to get a sense of really where are we going to go with this. Keeping in mind that we'll start having the discussions regarding ARPA, but there's time there.
I just want to make sure that that's on the table. Two other things were, of course, I'm always going to request, timing for a walkthrough now that we have cleaner air and the dehumidifier in there.
Probably what we'll do with that, Norm, is as we do the, we're going to need to do a site visit when we release the RFP. And so it makes sense for us probably to to be present, do the walkthrough when we're doing the site visit. So there's access to the building. Everything will be as secured as it can get. So that when we work towards that.
Okay, that's a good plan. And then the last one is being an engineer, I like data. So at some point I would like to see if we have information on the mold concentration or any mold issues in the building. I'd like to see a report on that, either from whoever does the evaluation or the like, just to nip some things in the bud, make sure we're all on the same page. Because I think it used to be the right way to go to have data. That's all I had, Tom.
Okay. Anybody, anything else? Hearing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn? No, don't be
I'll
shy.
take a motion to adjourn.
So
Okay.
moved.
All right. All right, Tom,
Yay.
Norm,
Yes.
Diana,
Yes.
I vote yes. Thank you all.
I'm sorry, who was the second on that?
That was
Norm
Diana.
moved it and Diane seconded it. Okay. So we're
Brett,
clear.
thank you very much for the information today. It's